The silence in the Grand City Library was a sacred thing, thick and heavy like a velvet curtain. It was a silence of rustling pages, soft coughs, and the gentle hum of the air conditioning. It was a silence that Max, the golden retriever with the calmest eyes and a blue service dog vest, had always respected. For 3 years he had been Sarah's anchor, a furry shadow of unwavering peace in her world of chaotic anxiety. He would lie at her feet for hours, a perfect statue of golden fur, never making a sound. Until today. It started with a low growl, a rumble that vibrated from deep within his chest. Sarah placed a hand on his head, whispering, "Easy, boy." But Max ignored her. His eyes were locked on a man sitting 2 tables away, an elderly man with a kind, wrinkled face, quietly reading a newspaper. The man hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound, hadn't done anything to warrant a second glance. Yet, Max's growl intensified, his body tensed like a coiled spring. And then, he exploded. With a bark that shattered the library's sacred silence, Max lunged. People gasped. Books dropped. A librarian shrieked. He wasn't just barking, he was snarling, an image of pure, unbridled aggression. He strained against his leash, pulling with all his might, trying to get to the terrified old man who was now shielding his face with his newspaper. "Max, no!" Sarah cried, her face burning with shame and confusion. She pulled back on the leash with all her strength, her own anxiety skyrocketing. This wasn't her dog. Her Max was gentle, intuitive, and calm. This was a monster. The librarian was already on the phone, her voice trembling as she reported a vicious, out-of-control animal. People were backing away, their faces a mixture of fear and judgment. The old man looked pale, his hands shaking. But then, through her panic, Sarah saw it. It wasn't in his snarl, but in his eyes. Behind the terrifying display, there was a desperate, pleading look she had never seen before. It was a look of pure, raw urgency. He wasn't looking at the man with hatred, but with a frantic, focused intensity. It was as if he was screaming a warning that no one could hear. In that moment, something shifted in Sarah. Her trust in her dog, forged over years of silent understanding, waged a war against the terrifying reality in front of her. She chose the dog. "Wait!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the frightened murmurs. "Something's wrong. He's never done this before. He's trying to tell us something." The librarian scoffed. "He's trying to attack an innocent man. That's what he's doing." Just as she said it, the unthinkable happened. The old man's newspaper slipped from his trembling hands. His face, which had been pale with fear, turned a ghastly shade of grey. His eyes rolled back into his head, and without a sound, he slumped forward, his head hitting the table with a dull thud. Silence. A new kind of silence, heavy with shock and dawning horror. For a split second, everyone froze. Then, a woman screamed, "He's not breathing!" Suddenly, Max's terrifying behavior snapped into focus. It wasn't an attack. It was an alert. A desperate, loud, chaotic alert that was the only way he knew how to break through the silent crisis unfolding before his sensitive nose. He had smelled the subtle, imperceptible chemical changes in the man's body, the silent signal of a massive, impending heart attack. He had tried to warn everyone, but his warning was mistaken for aggression. A doctor who happened to be in the library rushed forward, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. He began chest compressions as Sarah finally let go of the leash. Max, now calm, rushed to the man's side, not with aggression, but with concern. He started licking the man's hand, whining softly, as if encouraging him to hold on. The paramedics arrived minutes later, charging into the now chaotic library. They worked swiftly, using a defibrillator to shock the man's heart back into a rhythm. As they wheeled the now stable man out on a stretcher, one of the paramedics looked at Max, then at Sarah. "That dog of yours, he didn't attack him. He saved him. The doctor said he was having a silent MI. No classic symptoms. Without the dog's commotion, we would have been too late. Nobody would have noticed until it was over." The shame on the faces of the onlookers was palpable, replaced by awe. The librarian stood with her hand over her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Sarah knelt and wrapped her arms around Max's neck, burying her face in his fur. He wasn't a monster. He was a hero. He had been willing to be seen as the villain to save a life. A week later, Sarah received a visit. It was the old man, whose name was Arthur, accompanied by his daughter. His face was no longer grey, but full of life and gratitude. He knelt down slowly and looked Max in the eyes. "You saw something no one else could see," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You beautiful, noisy, wonderful dog. You saved my life." The library, once a place of shame for Sarah, became a place of honor. A small plaque was placed near the table where it happened, telling the story of the service dog who broke the silence to save a life. Sometimes the most desperate warnings don't come in whispers, but in roars. And sometimes true understanding requires us to listen not with our ears, but with our hearts, to a language spoken only by loyalty and love.